The rain drummed against the steel wreckage like impatient fingers on a war drum, a ceaseless whisper of nature reclaiming what didn't belong. Smoke curled from the broken hull of the escape pod, the emergency lights flickering weakly, reflecting off the jagged shards of metal and glass. The ship had burned up on entry, its passengers, a convoy of high-value prisoners, scattered like dying embers across the hostile terrain. None were expected to survive. But one did. She crawled out of the wreckage, her body aching, her delicate limbs trembling from both shock and exhaustion. Vaylin, a lone survivor from the doomed vessel, dragged herself onto the rocky surface, sucking in desperate gulps of air. Her silver-blue skin glistened under the alien moonlight, streaked with soot and dried blood. Her kind, the Several, were not built for physical endurance, slender, ethereal beings, more suited for intellect and precision rather than brute survival. And yet, here she was. Her captors had abandoned her. That was clear. The Galactic Dominion did not tolerate liabilities. The crash was a mere inconvenience in their grand scheme, and no one would come searching for prisoners who had outlived their usefulness. The planet she had landed on, Harvan 4, a brutal, uncharted wasteland, was a known death sentence. A dumping ground for things that needed to disappear. The darkness around her was alive with things that didn't belong in the light. She could hear them skittering, their breaths coming in hissing, guttural bursts. Predators. Watching. Waiting. A shrill howl echoed across the desolate expanse, rattling her bones. She tensed, her bioluminescent eyes darting through the shifting shadows. The creatures were drawing closer. Her heart pounded, panic rising like a tide. Her people had always spoken of the Dominion's cruelty, but she never imagined they would stoop so low as to cast her among beasts. Then, footsteps. Slow, deliberate, crunching against the brittle earth. Not the erratic movement of the predators but something else. Someone else. A towering figure emerged from the darkness, backlit by the eerie glow of the burning wreckage. His form was unlike anything she had seen before, broad, powerful, wrapped in a tattered jacket that had seen too many fights. His face was shadowed under a hood, but his eyes, they gleamed with something primal. A dangerous mix of curiosity and calculation. Vaylin froze. A human. She had heard of them, terrors of the battlefield, unpredictable, creatures of sheer defiance. The Dominion feared them. The galaxy loathed them. And yet, here one stood, staring at her as if she were some lost pet rather than a dying prisoner. The human crouched down, head tilting slightly as if assessing whether she was a threat or just another corpse waiting to be swallowed by the night. Then, without a word, he extended a hand. Vaylin hesitated. Every cell in her body screamed at her to run, to recoil. The Dominion had painted humans as monsters, destroyers of civilizations, the very embodiment of chaos. And yet, the creatures behind her stirred, their restless hunger growing bolder. She had no choice. Her trembling fingers reached out, grasping his rough, calloused hand. The moment their skin met, something passed between them, a silent understanding, a wordless contract. He pulled her up in one swift motion, steadying her as she swayed. "Can you walk?" His voice was rough, edged with something ancient. A voice that had spoken to death and laughed in its face. She swallowed hard and nodded. "Good," he muttered. "Because if we don't move now, we're dead." With that, he turned and started walking, forcing her to keep up. He didn't look back, didn't ask questions. He simply accepted her presence, as if it was inevitable. As if he had already decided she was coming with him. Behind them, the darkness shifted, restless and hungry. The hunt had begun. The air was thick with the scent of damp earth and something more sinister, something ancient that lurked beyond sight. Vaylin stumbled forward, her body still weak from the crash. The human moved with a quiet confidence, his pace steady, his movements efficient. He was unlike anything she had ever encountered, and yet, against all logic, she clung to his presence as if it were the only thing tethering her to survival. They had barely made it 100 steps before the first shadow lunged. A blur of muscle and claws erupted from the darkness, its jagged teeth flashing under the pale moonlight. Vaylin barely had time to react before the human moved. With a speed that contradicted his bulky frame, he He sidestepped the creature's charge and brought a blade down in one fluid motion. A wet, sickening crunch followed, and the thing collapsed, twitching at his feet. Vaylin's breath hitched. She had seen death before, but never like this, so swift, so precise. The human flicked the blood from his weapon without ceremony, his eyes scanning the surrounding shadows. "They're testing us," he muttered, more to himself than to her. Vaylin swallowed hard. "What are they?" He glanced at her, as if debating whether to answer. "Night stalkers. Pack hunters. They won't stop. Not until one of us is dead." A chill ran down her spine. The Dominion's prison ships were designed for maximum efficiency, minimal resources, no weapons, and no chance of escape. They hadn't just left her to die, they had fed her to the beasts of this world. Her legs wobbled, exhaustion clawing at her, but she forced herself to keep moving. There was no alternative. The human led her through a maze of jagged rock formations, his steps deliberate, his head tilting slightly every so often as if listening to the sounds beyond her hearing. They pressed on in silence for what felt like hours. The sky above remained an inky black, the stars distant and indifferent. The farther they moved from the crash site, the denser the terrain became. Strange, twisted trees loomed over them, their gnarled branches clawing at the sky. Suddenly, the human stopped. His shoulders tensed. Without a word, he grabbed her wrist and yanked her into the cover of a boulder just as another shadow emerged from the undergrowth. This one was different. Larger. Smarter. The Night Stalker's red eyes glowed like embers, its elongated limbs moving with a chilling grace. It sniffed the air, its mouth parting slightly to reveal rows of needle-sharp teeth. Then, it spoke. Flesh, still warm. Vaylin's blood turned to ice. The creatures weren't just hunters. They were intelligent. The human's grip on his weapon tightened. "Stay behind me. No sudden movements." The Night Stalker cocked its head, its grotesque form stepping closer. "You reek of defiance, human." A guttural chuckle rumbled through its chest. "I will enjoy breaking you." Vaylin felt her breath hitch. The human, however, merely exhaled slowly, his expression unreadable. "You talk too much." With that, he moved. The fight was nothing like before. This time, the Night Stalker anticipated his attack, dodging with unnatural speed. The human pivoted, his blade a blur, but the creature was faster. Claws lashed out, raking across his shoulder. He grunted but didn't slow. Vaylin watched, helpless, as predator and warrior clashed in a dance of violence. Every movement was calculated, every strike meant to kill. But the Night Stalker had the advantage of numbers. More of them crept into view, their eyes glowing in the dark. This wasn't a battle they could win. Not here. Not now. The human seemed to realize it at the same time she did. He feinted to the left, striking the creature's leg before grabbing Vaylin's arm. "Run." She didn't hesitate. They bolted into the darkness, the Night Stalkers shrieking in rage behind them. The hunt was far from over. Their breaths came in ragged gasps, their bodies pushed to the limits as they tore through the dense, unforgiving terrain. Vaylin's limbs screamed in protest, but the human's grip on her wrist was unrelenting, his pace never faltering. The Night Stalker's guttural shrieks echoed behind them, a chilling reminder of what failure meant. The human made a sharp turn, dragging her through a narrow ravine littered with jagged stones and gnarled roots. The ground was treacherous, slick with moss and moisture. Vaylin stumbled but didn't fall. She wouldn't allow herself to. Not now. Not when survival hung by a thread. "How much farther?" she gasped, struggling to keep up. "Not far," he answered, voice tight with focus. "There's a cave ahead. We can bottleneck them." A sudden, piercing wail split the air, closer than before. Vaylin risked a glance over her shoulder. Shadows moved in the darkness, their eyes like smoldering coals. The pack was closing in. The human cursed under his breath. "Move." With one last burst of strength, they surged forward, reaching the mouth of the cave just as the first Night Stalker burst from the underbrush. It was on them in an instant, claws swiping through the air where they had been moments before. The human shoved Vaylin inside and turned, blade flashing as he slashed across the creature's chest. It shrieked, staggering back. The delay was just enough. With a final push, he dove into the cave, rolling to his feet as the first Night Stalker lunged after them. The human didn't hesitate. He grabbed a loose boulder from the cave floor and, with a strength that defied reason, heaved it into place, sealing the entrance just as the creatures slammed against it. The cave trembled from the force of their rage, their snarls reverberating through the narrow space. Vaylin pressed herself against the cool stone, her heart pounding. They were safe. For now. The human exhaled, rolling his shoulder where the Night Stalker had clawed him. Blood seeped through his torn jacket, but he didn't seem to acknowledge the pain. Instead, he turned to her, his gaze sharp even in the dim light. "You all right?" She nodded, unable to form words. "Good. Because they'll find another way in soon enough. We need to move deeper." Vaylin forced herself upright, scanning the cavern. Stalactites hung from the ceiling like jagged teeth, and the air was thick with the scent of damp stone and decay. This place was ancient, untouched. A sanctuary and a tomb all at once. "How do you know this cave?" she asked, voice hushed. The human's expression darkened. "I've been here before." Something in his tone sent a chill down her spine, but she didn't press. Not yet. There were more pressing concerns. The Night Stalkers weren't the only threats on this world. The cave extended further into the depths of the unknown, a path carved by time itself. There was no telling what lay ahead, but one thing was certain. They weren't out of danger yet. The cave stretched endlessly before them, an abyss of stone and shadow. Every step echoed, a reminder of their isolation. The human moved ahead, his every action deliberate. Vaylin followed, her mind racing. The weight of everything, being abandoned, hunted, saved by an enemy, pressed on her like a mountain. But there was no time for fear. Only survival. Minutes stretched into hours as they pressed deeper. The sounds of the Night Stalkers faded behind them, replaced by an unsettling silence. The human's breathing was steady, but his wounds worried her. The claw marks on his shoulder bled sluggishly, dark against his weathered skin. "You're hurt," she said softly. He shrugged. "Had worse." Vaylin frowned but didn't argue. Instead, she focused on the path ahead. Then, suddenly, a soft glow flickered in the distance. A way out. Or another trap. The human hesitated, then moved toward it. Vaylin kept close, her body tense. As they neared, the glow became clearer, bioluminescent fungi clung to the walls, illuminating a passage leading outside. Relief flooded her chest. They stepped into the open air, greeted by the vast horizon. The land stretched far, wild and untamed, but for the first time since the crash, it felt like possibility instead of doom. "We made it," she whispered. The human wiped blood from his face, his sharp gaze scanning the land. "For now." She turned to him. "You never told me your name." He exhaled. "Call me Rook." She studied him. "Rook. Why did you save me? You're kind and mine, we're not supposed to trust each other." His expression hardened for a moment before softening into something unreadable. "Because letting them win means losing what makes us different. If we do what they expect, leave the weak to die, let fear rule us, then we're no better than them." Vaylin absorbed his words. The Dominion had left her to die because she was no longer useful. The Night Stalkers hunted because that was their nature. But Rook. He had chosen something different. He had chosen to save a stranger, to defy expectations. "What now?" she asked. He glanced at the horizon. "We find shelter. Food. Figure out what's next." She nodded. "Together." A rare smile flickered across his face. "Yeah. Together." As they set off, the sun rising behind them, Vaylin felt something new stir within her, a quiet hope. The universe was vast and cruel, but in this moment, she realized something important. Kindness, no matter how small, was the one thing that could defy the darkness. And sometimes, that was enough.